So here we are in the magnificent Worcester Cathedral, which they started construction of in 1084 and finished in its current form 1504. So 400 years. I think in the first 100 years or so, they pretty much built a fair bit of it, but then the main tower collapsed apparently, and they carried on building it and adapting it. So 400 years worth of construction. This is the giant headstock of a 2.4 ton bell. It was made of elm and fitted into an oak frame. Look at that. They'd have been sat on phosphor bronze bearings, now made out of all made out of cast iron, whereas this had cast iron elements. It's upside down, so if you think of it as being the other way around and the bell hanging off that sort of hoop thing there, and then it would have been swung. In this case, the really largest bells are even heavier, but the biggest one wasn't sort of swung. It was just hit with a hammer, and I think that was 5 tons. But this was a headstock for a 2.4 ton bell made of bronze. God, fantastic. You can see it there. There's a nice diagram showing it the right way around. Let's get some idea of just how large some of the bells are. You know, when cathedrals, of course, are enormous buildings. Here you are. Ding, ding. Absolutely beautiful. And these come back from about 1360 onwards. Some made in Kent, certainly one of them was. So, but what a great collection of bells. I think there's about 16, I think, in the full peal to ring the sort of church bells. You have 16 different ones, different tones, I guess. I'm no expert on bells, but I love, great big cast pieces like this. God, look at that, the extra reinforcing there to take the weight. And yeah, you do get a little ding when you tap it. This is another great bit of kit, the Gurney stove. Now, this was a really successful invention by Goldsworthy Gurney, who was also inventing steam cars and things like that. But this was a way of providing heat that didn't dry the air, because it had water in it, and the heat was transferred through water that then vaporised, and it was coke-fired. In those days, they believed that heat was part to do with mass, so it was massively constructed out of cast iron. He also invented some lights that are still outside the front of the Houses of Parliament. Wow, it's got incredible acoustics, hasn't it? The earliest chapter house in the UK. Monks used to read Bibles in here. Because it's completely circular, it's got really unusual acoustics, like a whispering gallery. Can you hear that? Shame I can't sing, really. I think, don't want to crack any of this lovely old glass. Look at that, central support. Isn't it magnificent? That is really cool. I tell you what do you think? How old is it? 1100. 1,000 years old then, isn't it? It's bearing up rather well, isn't it? God, the work that's gone into it. Just incredible things, aren't they? Amazing. Another rare survivor, the Handel organ. Now, it would have been hand wound, but thankfully now, instead of putting a great big handle in the side, it's electrically driven. Really are magnificent places, cathedrals. When you think this one was sort of 400 plus years in the making, just think of the work that's gone into it. What was amazing as well is, there's catacombs underneath some of this stuff, so it's all built on stilts as well. It's just magnificent, the time and, engineering mastery of it as well. Look at the way it lines up in a minute when I turn around. Oh, and that's, it was King John was buried here, who was the one before after Richard the Lionheart. And look at that lineup. Look at that. They didn't have lasers and stuff. When you think what we build now, and we've got all that hydraulics and lasers and you name it, they had bits of string and a few donkeys. It was absolutely incredible. Yeah, King John was buried here because apparently he liked Worcester, and he wasn't particularly liked as a king. They preferred Richard the Lionheart that went before him, and this is underneath it, the catacombs. And look at the sheer amount of vaulted ceilings and these stone columns that great weight on top of them, but they've held up, haven't they? They've held up for 1,000 years. Well, if you've made it this far, thanks very much, and hope you've enjoyed looking at this marvellous construction and engineering mastery as well of its time, and speak again. Cheers for now.